where we are talking about the gospel of Jesus. It is called the fifth gospel, where we try to take from the gospel and the book of Revelation of Jesus Christ the lessons for us in this world so that we can see how to apply it in our daily lives. And it is interesting that today it's a topic about our patience to God's will in our lives, and also how we can perceive the signs of His actions in our lives, especially this past few days where we've been having a lot of discussion in social media about the rapture, about when the rapture is going to happen, if it was yesterday or if it is today. Well, in the other part of the world is already close to September 25th, so we see that it's not actually bound to a day specifically. And the topic that we're going to be discussing today is this cry that we see in the book of Revelation, right in the fifth seal, when all the souls that dedicated their lives to Christ, they cry out to God, to Jesus, saying, how long, Lord, will we be waiting for this to happen? That is, for His justice to happen. And we're going to see here, right in the Gospel of Jesus according to Mark chapter 13, that way before the book of Revelation was brought to John, Christ was already talking about this. Christ was already talking about the end of times, and that is an interesting distinction that we need to make, which is not the same as the end of the world, but it's the end of times. And that implies something really important to all of us. And already thank you all that are participating and are here with us in this live that we are discussing about the gospel of Jesus, our patience to God's will in our lives, and also to observe the signs of His workings in our lives, especially this time where there's been a lot of worries on the end of the world, or the end of times, or the moment of the rapture. So let's read here the Gospel of Jesus according to Mark chapter 13. We're going to be reading up to verse 11, but this passage is very extensive. It goes until verse 37, so you can also read in your home later on for you to see what else that Christ is bringing to all of us. We're going to be focusing on those verses. So what is it that the evangelist Mark writes here? As Jesus was leaving the temple, one of His disciples said to Him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." And then Jesus replied, "Do you see all these great buildings? Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked Him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are all about to be fulfilled?" Jesus said to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name claiming I am He, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginning of birth pains. You must be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and flogged in the synagogues. on account of me, you will stand before governors and kings as witnesses to them, and the gospel must be first preached to all nations. Whenever you are arrested and brought to trial, do not worry beforehand about what to say. Just say whatever is given you at the time, for it is not you speaking, but the Holy Spirit. Well, there's a lot to unpack here, but since we are talking about our patience to God's will in our lives, and also we are figuring out the signs, right? Christ already answered that to us, but we're going to go back to what he's telling us. And what is it that all of that has to do with the main topic that we've been discussing along this week, which is about sacrifice? We are trying to understand the sacrifice that we must do in our lives to God so that we can be with him. And we are looking that in the idea and the notion of all of those that decided to dedicate their lives to Christ, the one that faced the unjust trial against him, overcame death, resurrected, and showed us that there is a life beyond this material world, and showed us that we can dedicate and have the hope of a better future, even though we are facing sufferings in this world, even though we are full of challenges. So all that has a connection to sacrifice, because the idea of sacrifice, as we discussed, is the idea of you making an offer to God. You have the historical use of sacrifice in different ways. First, as we discussed in the beginning of this week, sacrifice was used, let's say, to pay out your debt, because things happened, and then as a way for you to show your gratitude to the gods, you would do a sacrifice. Another way was to also ask for something, to request. So it would be an offering for you to have the opportunity to make a request to the gods and receive their blessings, or even send out curses to other people. All that for us to see that sacrifice is a way of exchange. So it's a way for you to have this exchange with God, in this case that we're talking about, the one and true God, and see what it is that you can get from that offering. Now, when we talk about that, we are only thinking in a very methodological, if I may say, a way, in a very cold way, let's say, because you are only thinking on what you get from that offer. You are not actually giving yourself to God in a way for you to be with him. So that's the difference, an important difference that we need to make from the old mentality and ways of doing sacrifice to the one that Christ showed us. So the first one, the first two that I said, it is more of an external sacrifice. So you are making that for you to have something in return. What Christ tells us and showed us is that when you do a honest and true sacrifice, in a spiritual one, you're giving yourself to God's will. And that has a connection to the necessary patience that we need to have with God's will, with what he's doing in our lives. And the first point that here, I think that an important topic for us to have in our minds is the idea of time in all that. And that will connect us with the passage, because when Christ is telling us about the temple, first, here in Mark, it's not brought up, but in Luke, we see that the disciples, they're actually talking with Christ and saying that the temple is very beautiful. Look how this structure is built to please God, to show the beauty that is God. It's a way also to say that the temple in itself is an offering to God. Now, what Christ says is that all of that will fall. And in John, we see that in the moment when Christ is discussing with the Pharisees and the scribes and all of those that questioned his authority, his spiritual authority with God, he was saying that the temple will fall down, but give it 3 days and he will rise it up. He will rise that up again. So Christ is bringing us two distinctions, right? First one is the structure, and the other one is the body. We see that this prophecy of Jesus fulfills itself when you have first, in the idea of the structure, the fall of Jerusalem, when in AD 66 to 70, you have there with Titus in the Roman Empire, the fall of Jerusalem. So you have the fall of the temple. And the other one, which is connected to the idea of a bodily temple, that is our body, right? Our material body. You see that being fulfilled with the crucifixion of Christ and then his resurrection 3 days after. So the idea here is that anything that is material, anything that you use in this world, the material world that we can touch, that we can feel, right? Regardless of what you do, regardless of the offer that you believe you're doing, it has a set time. It's not eternal. It fades with time. It is perennial. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to maintain itself. Everything that is material is not going to maintain itself. Whether it's a structure, whether it's our body, everything will fade with time. And that's important for us, because then you start to understand that it doesn't matter the material sacrifice that you try to do, because that would end up with time anyway. It's not something that you're taking from yourself. It's not an internal sacrifice. It's not the sacrifice of what you hold it in you and that it's most valuable to you. You're just taking something that you believe represents whatever you want to represent, and then you're using it as an offering. Well, Christ is telling us, let's do it differently. Let's actually work to sacrifice what's within us, and then we will be ready to be with God, to be one with God, to walk with Him, just like I am walking with Him, and I am one with Him. That is Christ. So this prophecy that Christ brings, you see that they have different times. First one, as we said, it is the idea that everything that is material will fade with time, whatever is the time that happens. The second one is that time itself, the prophecy itself, it's not bound to a chronological time. So when Christ is bringing us this prophecy about the temple that is going to fall, he's putting in two perspectives, and they both happen, but in different times. That's to say that the prophecy is not bound with time. No matter the day that we may think, no matter the day that we may figure out, that we may calculate, that we try to look in the gospel and discuss about it, God's prophecy is not bound to our calendar, to the chronological time that we are. It will happen in accordance to God's will, whatever the day, whatever the time, whatever the week, doesn't matter, because we cannot limit God's will and power to what we believe represents the entirety, that represents time itself, that is our calendar, right? Because if we're discussing about calendar or even time zones, here in the US, you see that they're different. You have 4 different time zones. And not only that, you also have time zone in comparison to the other side of the world, which I said at the beginning. If you think about it and discussing about the rapture that it's all about nowadays, they've already passed through the rapture. And what happened there? We didn't receive any news or anything like that. So you see, you cannot bound God's prophecy to a time per se. What we can do and what Christ gives us to understand when these prophecies will happen, and when I say prophecies, all of the prophecies that we see here in the Holy Bible, specifically in the New Testament, and more specifically the book of Revelation of Jesus, are the signs. So Christ gives us signs. What we see here is that the disciples, they did this work for us. They asked Christ, so okay, what are the signs? Well, Jesus first says that the sign that we will get if we continue to be asking to understand God's will in this world with our anxiety and our impatience to live on in His will, the sign that we're going to receive is the sign of Jonah. Just like because Christ said that to all of those that were in the gospel asking to Him, give us a sign, give us a sign, give us a sign. And then He turned to them and said, look, if you continue on that path of corrupting your own perspective, your own view of the world, your own connection with God, the sign that you're going to get is the sign of Jonah. And then with the disciples, He goes further on to put details on those signs. And then He tells us, if you see people trying to deceive you, saying that they are me, or that they are just like me, believe it, they are not. That's already a sign for you. There's no one in this world that is equal to Christ. We are all working to be with Him. But no one is equal to Christ here in this world. We have to keep that in our mind. And the other thing is that Christ is saying, look, this world, you all already know, you all already read about it, received about it in tradition, and understands that unfortunately this world works only to promote war and destruction, unfortunately. So what you're going to see is that you're going to have nation rising against nation. You're going to have kingdom against kingdom. There will be rumors of wars. There will be a lot of discussions of how the world is in itself, the famine that we see. Let's say since Christ, that wasn't solved. Famine is still there. Even though we are a society that produces a lot of food, we still have famine. And He tells us, don't be alarmed by all that, because all of this, they are signs. They are signs to the end of times. We will get to a point where society itself won't take it anymore. Imagine, you are constantly there having wars and rumors of wars, and the idea that something bad is going to be forever in your life. It's famine, it's misery, it's destruction, it's people working against people. It will get to a point where you have to say, and humanity will say, that's enough. All right, we already learned with all the story that we have, all the history, that's enough. We cannot be doing or not be on this path again and again and again. And then that's what Jesus is asking us, to be on guard, to be in attention to this idea and those signs of the end of times, where everything that society is working for and continues to work for since the beginning of times is bound to end, is bound to finish. There's not a set date or set time. Only God knows when that will happen, but it's set to finish. You have to be certain about it. You can have that hope because Christ is promising us, is giving us this prophecy, and he already showed us that all the prophecies that he brings, they will be fulfilled, just like the one with the temple was fulfilled, will be fulfilled in the future again, when we see all the souls, as it is discussed in the fifth seal, crying out to God, "How long, O Lord, for your justice?" And that justice will happen. That justice is happening when we are being awake and we are being on guard, being vigilant of our actions, of what we are doing here in this world, and how we can help, how we can work for Christ to manifest his kingdom here in this world. So that's the point here, is for us to understand that our sacrifice, our dedication, the offering of what we value most within ourselves to God, so we can be in him, and we can be patient enough to wait for his will, to wait for the time that he is going to fulfill his work. Then we are being ready to be with Christ, and working for that, it is a sign that we are trusting him, because Jesus, he already showed us. When you read the gospel, and specifically the book of Revelation too, you see that a lot of the prophecies that Christ brought, they already fulfilled, or they are still going to fulfill itself and repeat it as a great cycle until the end of times. And that means that the world itself, it's not going to end. How is that God will destroy his own creation if the time is not yet if it's not yet the time for it? Because we know, according to our study of the universe, that it gets to a point where the stars itself, they have a finish, they have a moment that they will end, and they will be to explode, right? The sun itself has a time already. But if the sun itself that maintains life, it's not going to be destroyed from billions of years, what to say about the earth? God is not going to destroy earth itself, that is his own creation. They're not going to do that. So it's not the end of the world itself, but end of times. It's the end of a cycle, a huge and big cycle that we see narrated in the book of Revelation, and that will propel us to a better world, to a moment in society and humanity's history, to be in this new earth, this new heaven, this new Jerusalem, where God dwells among us, where God is with us. So that's what we see in Christ. And when we sacrifice ourselves to Christ, when we sacrifice our will to God's will, we are showing our trust. We are showing our trust in his actions in our lives. We are being open and being open not only for his actions, but also being open to receive his peace. Because if God and if Christ already showed us all the signs for the end of times, and he's bluntly telling us what is going to happen throughout history, we shouldn't be alarmed, and we shouldn't worry in terms of the destruction of the world, but we should be on guard. We should be ready. We should prepare ourselves and work in a way that we can protect ourselves from humanity's madness, from all this craziness that people try to promote with the destruction of the other and all that, because that's not the will of God. God doesn't want to destroy life that He created. He wants to transform it. He wants to put it on a new path that we see in His book of Revelation, that is to have the new earth and new heaven and to be in the new Jerusalem. So let's trust Christ, let's trust God and trust in His works, in His actions, so that we can be in His peace and not be in patience trying to figure out the final date of our lives, or of the world's life itself, humanity's life itself. Let's just be patient and do our part. Be on guard, be vigilant, praying and being vigilant as Jesus asks us in His gospel. And that's it. That's our message. We thank you for being with us, for participating here. And just to show you that you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and be receiving these videos, these lives that we are doing. You can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on Instagram too. I mean, follow me on Instagram too, and participate in our group channel that is called The Fifth Gospel, which you find on Instagram, and then you can receive these notations, because I have here with me some notes that I made about this passage that we study. And when you participate on this in this group channel, I send to you these notes, and also we share prayers, we share reflections, we share the Bible verses, so we can continue on this path with Christ, on this journey, yes, with Christ. Thank you so much. Thank you also, Mayada, for all the support, for all the support, all the help that we are receiving here on social media. And we finish by wishing you that the peace of God may be upon you and your life today and always. And we say, God is present and Jesus lives in our hearts forever. Thank you very much for being here with us in this life.